happens. So we're actually live now. So welcome Mark, Burgess and Stifyn Parri, who played Gordon Collins, and Stifyn Parri played, go on, say your name.
Duncan.
Christopher Duncan. I couldn't remember his surname then. So I'm just going to just click off this so I can see you live. We're right, I can see you now. So, woo, how are you guys?
Yeah. We're off to
I'm well, and Mark. Isn't it really weird? Because now is the first time Mark and I have seen each other for a long time.
Yeah, well, I think it's over 30 years.
Have you seen each other? How long, sorry?
30 years.
30 years? Oh, hang on a minute. My things just come up. Your internet is unstable. Just to bear with me a moment. So, are we live? It's all right. I'm just checking with my friend.
Oh, it's going ever so smoothly, isn't it?
So unprofessional at the moment, this. Oh, we're live. We're live. Panic over, guys. We can relax. Right. I'm more nervous about that than actually doing this.
Well, I was quite relaxed. I'm a nervous wreck now.
Well, that's me, I'm afraid. I'm sorry about that, Mark. Take a deep breath now.
That's all right. That's all right, yes.
Well, first of all, obviously, thank you guys very much for joining me, and much appreciate your time to chat to me about your Brookside years.
Not at all, Ian. Well, we've spoken a lot, via text and messaging and stuff, so it's good to see you and speak live.
Yes, it is nice to speak now and again. And obviously,
I've been so looking forward to this. Clips. I'm going to wet myself. I'm so excited.
This is going to be fun, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be more like Carry On, Brookside.
They missed a trick there.
You did?
Yeah.
Right. Shall I start with the first question to pick your brains?
Oh, is that a quiz?
Put my glasses on because I can't see these now. Who wants to go first?
Mark, you go first.
Thanks, Stifyn.
These are gentlemen.
You were in the show. You were in the show before me.
That is true. That's true. Yeah. Okay.
And after me.
And after, yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
You were the sandwich filling, Stifyn.
I love being.
That could be taken in a few different ways, Mark.
Yeah. Oh God.
We've only started. I knew this was going to be fun.
Right. Sorry, Ian. Question number one.
Yes. Question number one for you, Mark, and then we'll move to you, Stifyn. So, Mark, how did your part come about? And obviously, what had led up to it? What had you been doing prior to being cast as Gordon Collins in 1986, I believe?
It was the spring of 1986. Mm-hmm. How did it come about? Well, it was just a phone call from my agent. It's a sort of traditional way, really. Nothing. I didn't know anybody had anything to do with the program. It was just a phone call from my agent. They said, you've got an audition for Brookside, and I went, oh yeah, because I did know of it, but I'd never seen it or never watched it.
You've taken away one of my questions now, but never mind.
Oh, that's right. Well,
no, don't worry.
Okay, well, forget I said that, but basically got an audition for Brookside, so I just went up to Liverpool and with a few others and did a reading, as I remember. But yeah, I didn't know anything about it. It was just out of the blue, and it could have been for anything, but it happened to be for Brookside. But I hadn't been doing any television before that, or I'd been doing very much theatre.
Yes,
I've been touring and doing a West End play as well, and we just moved to Brighton actually a year or so before Brookside came along, and I was very quiet work-wise. There was nothing really happening, and we had our first child was born in May '86. So yeah, there was we needed some decent work, and that audition came in, and fingers crossed, and I went up for it. It was the first of about three auditions I did to get the job.
Who did you read with when you can you remember?
I remember reading with Jim and Doreen.
Oh, lovely.
Certainly at it may have been the second or third interview I read with them in the garden of the Collins house. And they filmed it, and then had a chat with the producer afterwards, and I went home, and it was kind of awkward because I remember going back home with some of the other actors that had auditioned as well. So, we were all chatting about what we were up to and, about Brookside and stuff. And I couldn't really contribute very much because I didn't about it.
You haven't watched it.
Well, no, I did. I mean, I did do a bit of research. I watched it once or twice. Once I knew I was up for it, just to see what it was. But I didn't really think it was anything that I didn't think for a moment I'd find myself in it. You know, it just seemed a very, very Liverpool-based thing, and why would I get a part in it? But so I just went up and did the audition.
Nice surprise.
Yeah, it was a lovely surprise when the agent called me. I think it was the last thing on a Friday afternoon, about 10 days later. And I remember him saying, my agent, John Marney, he was, and he just phoned about 5 o'clock on a Friday evening, you know, which is because you've given up all hope by then of hearing from your agent. And then you know that you've got a long weekend ahead of you. And he just phoned up and he said, "Oh, hi, Mark, it's John. Can I have your national insurance number?" And I thought, oh, what a downer. You know, why surely you've got that. That's the most boring question I've ever been asked. I got a bit to him and I said, why? And he said, oh, Brookside need it. You've got the job.
Oh, just like that.
Yeah. So that was how I heard. It was great. You
must have been ecstatic when you heard the news, so casually to be announced to you like that.
Well, he was being a little bit, he's just being a little bit funny about it, but because that's the agent's best moment, isn't it? When they phone up, it used to be phone calls in those days, of course. You know, they used to phone you up and say you've got the job, and that's what makes their jobs all worthwhile. But yes, he was a good chap. He was a friend, and he also had a place in Brighton, so I knew him quite well. So yeah, but that's how it began.
Wonderful. And then you were there for 4 years, I believe. It was 4 years, was it?
Yeah. Well, it was. I was contracted to do 7 episodes originally, which I thought would, you know, that you just think that's like forever. As an actor, you think that's just fantastic, which it was. But actually, one thing led to another, and I did getting on for 140 episodes over 4 years. Yeah,
a long time.
Good times. A long time.
Good times. Yes. Okay, well, Stifyn, do you want me to repeat the question? It was just, can you remember how your part came about and what had led up to it?
Please.
Okay, yes, Stifyn, how did the part come about of Christopher? What had led up to it? Because were you presenting before Brookside? Or
I was really fascinated because I'd forgotten how Mark had got the job, because my story was completely different. I was living in Cardiff. And I was working in television. I was doing a soap opera on the Welsh Channel 4 that had started the same night as Brookside started on Channel 4. S4C. And S4C, and I was doing a Welsh soap opera. Then I went off to do some theatre. And then my agent, who was a little bit sort of narrow-minded at the time. Oh, before that, bizarrely, in my first flat ever, I remember sitting on my shag pile carpet with a hangover, watching the omnibus every Saturday.
Oh, yes.
And Mark was in it at the time, and they kept talking about this Christopher Duncan for months and months and months.
Yes. It led up for quite a while. It was quite a while before you actually were seen.
It was a whole year, I think. But I remember you found out that he was an antique dealer and he was a ski instructor, and he sounded so marvelous. And I thought, I wonder who they're going to have to play this. And then I get a phone call from my agent saying, you've got an audition for Brookside to play Gordon's friend. And she said the word friend like my mother would have used to say the word hysterectomy. So I knew what the part was.
Yes.
And I went up for it, and there was loads of people. We'd all been told to go dressed similarly, and I turned up with, everybody was in the same pair of ripped jeans. Well, not the same pair, there wouldn't have been room, but the same sort of ripped jeans, leather jackets, spiky hair. And I had the most embarrassing audition ever, which I can't really go into detail on here because there's a lot of swearing in it. But
I don't mind. I'm sure the viewing public don't mind.
Well, shall I say it?
Yes, say it.
Okay. Right. On my way to the train station to get a 5.5-hour train to get to Brookside, I realised I couldn't do a Liverpudlian accent.
Right.
And I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I phoned a friend of mine who was just so talented with accents. more talented than I am speaking at the moment. And he said, write this very rude sentence down, and if you memorize that, and it's got all the sounds of the Liverpudlian guttural sounds you need. So I said, well, tell me what it is then. So I put my bags down on the way to the train and wrote this obscene sentence down, which was, get your friggin' stockings off, let me fuck you chicken. So I locked myself in the toilet of a train for 5.5 hours and memorized this and did it in so many different, get your frig, get your frig, get your frig, get your, all sorts of different characters, all with this amazing, ridiculous Liverpudlian accent. And it was Dorothy Andrew. I'm sure you remember, Mark. Dorothy Andrew was the casting director, and she called me into this little room where Phil Redmond was sitting, who, you know, I was so excited to meet because he was the king of television at the time.
Absolutely,
and
yes.
they were recording the interviews on a camera, on a tripod. And he said, I hope you don't mind, Stifyn, or Stifyn, he probably called me because I spell it so stupidly. And he said, you don't mind, we're recording all the auditions. And I said, no, not at all. And all get this part that I desperately wanted. And as I went to sit down, Phil Redmond said, by the way, your character's from North Wales. And I went, I've just spent 5.5 hours in a train toilet
agonizing
learning
hours.
Liverpudlian. And it was the most obscene sentence. And they said, what is the sentence? And I said, oh, I couldn't tell you. It's too rude. I'd never get the job. And Dorothy Andrews said, oh, come on, darling, you can tell us. And on my mother's life, as I took a breath in to say, get your friggin' stockings off, the camera fell off the tripod on the floor. And me being a performing seal, I jumped on the floor, looked down the lens and said, get your friggin' stockings off, let me fuck you chicken. And I got the job. But it was for one episode. And I stayed then. Mark was what they call, do you remember Mark? It was very posh. We always had the joke. Mark was called one of the regulars. And I'd come in and out and go and do some theatre and come back. But I was there on and off, playing havoc and laughing with Mark for 2 years.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, you're recurring. That's right. Yes.
I was reoccurring, like a reoccurring nightmare.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I can't remember how did Gordon and Chris, because they did eventually split up, I think, didn't they?
Well, as far as I remember, but Mark, tell me if I'm wrong, because probably your brain is so much better than mine. But I kept getting thrown out of the house because the Collinses, I was there to get Mark's character into as much more trouble than he would do it without me.
Which
and
you
then
did,
they'd throw me out.
Yeah, which
Am I
you
right
did.
in saying that, Mark?
Definitely,
So
yeah.
after the 10th time, I thought, I want to go and do a musical now. I'm going to go. So I went to audition for some West End stuff. So that's what happened to me.
Oh, and that's why they wrote the character out.
Yeah, but I can't quite remember what the final straw was that sort of saw the back of you.
I only remember, and I think this is because Ian posted it on Facebook not so long ago, is right. I was thrown out because I'd got you into a lot of trouble. I wouldn't be surprised if it was something to do with your grandmother, which we'll come to in a minute, hopefully.
Oh, I've got a question about that.
Oh, good, because I've got an answer. But
I bet you have.
But I remember doing a scene where I was leaving and I had my skis under my arm. And I said goodbye then. And I think that was my last one. And I thought, right, I'm off to the West End, darling.
Yeah. As you do. Was that at the time? Because Mark, I can remember when I was, one memory of you from when I think I would have been about 8 or 9 when your episodes were airing.
Right.
You were terrible.
Ian.
I don't mean to be rude, sorry, but I just remember thinking how awful it was when Mark, your character Gordon, had a terrible motorbike accident, hadn't he? And he was all bandaged up like a mummy, and he couldn't get up the stairs properly, and he had to get Annabel to scratch his nose or something for him. It was just
worse than that, Ian. Yeah, It was. I don't quite know why they inflicted that on me. I mean, I think I was quite well into it. I'd been there a couple of years or so, and I think he had his bike and he he'd gone to France, I think, and had this accident with a combine harvester or something.
Oh, it must have been a terrible accident.
I remember going to the hospital in Liverpool and sort of being fitted up in this plaster cast, which was a bizarre contraption, because once you were in it on set, you were in it, and obviously I tried not to drink too much, and I remember in the green room, people like John McArdle used to feed me sandwiches and tidbits and stuff like that. And Bill Dean was very kind. He used to sort of hold the teacup for me and help me drink. But yeah, it was. I sort of had a feeling that there was a little bit of a joke against me going on somewhere in production, because it just seemed a little bit over the top.
I mean, how long did that take to get into that cast?
Well, it was okay. I mean, it was like strapping on a.
Hold on.
Yeah. Stephen, behave yourself.
It was like
Mind the gap.
It was trying to put on a piece of armor. So yes. I just walked into it, literally. So I just walked into it, and they strapped me up from behind. But it was very uncomfortable. I just couldn't quite work it out. I couldn't blow my nose or anything.
It went on for quite a while. I think he was in it for quite a while, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was in it for quite a few episodes. And I can't remember how he got out of it, but yeah, he had this big bike. God, I don't know anything about motorbikes, and I've never ridden one, so I didn't do my own stunts or anything like that. But yeah, he just had an accident in France, as I say, with some combine harvester that was coming the wrong way. Well, I should think it was going the right way, and Gordon was probably the wrong way. But that was the story there. But very uncomfortable, yeah. Yeah,
I can imagine.
Mark, that's just reminded me. You saying that you couldn't ride a bike.
No, or drive a car.
But do you remember they did one episode where you had to drive with me coming in like some comedy act behind you on the back of your bike. So it was very easy to have a stuntman, because the helmet, it didn't matter. As long as it was your build, it could have been anybody in there. And I'm convinced to this day that the stuntman wasn't really a stuntman. He's just said he was in order to get the job.
Oh,
and when
really?
they said action, he was so nervous, he zoomed in at about 60 miles an hour and went straight into one of the trees, and off we came off the bike.
Really?
And we had to scrap the scene. All because you couldn't drive.
I couldn't do anything. I couldn't drive. I couldn't ride a bike. But yeah, I do remember seeing quite a few episodes of Brookside in which I was, turning up on the close on the back of this, well, not on the back, riding this bike. And I thought
quite early days, wasn't it, when you had the motorbike?
Doing that, I've not. Why am I in that? I'm just sitting here watching. I'm anywhere to Liverpool for weeks. I was suddenly in this episode. In fact, I left. I was still arriving on the close on driving this bike. So, and I don't know who it was that was in it, or indeed what he was doing. But certainly
he wasn't a stuntman. I can tell you that.
No, I know. But I did learn to drive a car about halfway. I had been learning to drive. I just always failed my tests. But but I used the time and the money to learn to drive properly in when I was in Brookside, because we had to be towed. Do you remember? We were constantly. Remember with the dog incident.
Well, I posted that clip. Yes, so that was an awful clip. Poor Lucky.
Yes, yeah. It was tragic time for Lucky. But yeah, I remember us being towed in the car because I couldn't drive.
We were on a truck, weren't we?
Some sort of truck thing, yeah. Doing this.
Well, yes, because that was your joyride, and that was like Christopher. I think that was it was Christopher that was kind of encouraging that as well, wasn't it? Really,
that's the thing. It was Gordon was a very well, I think. Tell me if I'm wrong, Mark. Your character was a very well behaved character, really, but that was easily led.
Well, easily led by you, yeah. When Christopher Duncan came along, yeah. I mean, it was all plain sailing until Chris came along, and then it all went a bit wrong. Yeah, I was easily led, and I was probably a little bit starstruck, and a little bit, a bit influenced by him. But it led to some good fun scenes.
We had some great storylines. But the killing of the dog storyline, because there were so many viewers watching Brookside at the time, because of course there was no Netflix, there was no Sky, there was millions of viewers. And I remember being on a train in Abergavenny in Wales with my hat folded down, because if you made any eye contact with anybody, there'd be a queue of people wanting autographs. And as I was getting off the train, this old lady smacked me across the head with a handbag. And I thought, oh my God, this is what queer bashing is. This is the first incident of anti-gayness I'm coming across. And I said to this old woman, excuse me, what were you doing that for? And she said, you killed that dog, didn't you?
God.
And then I stood back and I thought, oh, thank God for that. And then she said, and knowing you actors, you probably had to kill more than one.
Oh, well, that was just charming, wasn't it?
I know. I've never been to Abergavenny since.
No, I don't. It's still looking out for you. Good God.
Oh.
Yeah. No, that was quite traumatic, wasn't it? We'd been out drinking at some nightclub, hadn't we? And we'd come back
You'd been to a restaurant, and you both had a bet on that you'd do a runner from the restaurant without paying, if you remember.
Yeah, well, I do.
That was a fantasy that they were acting out, Gordon and Christopher.
All I remember in that scene, I don't remember the plot, but I always remember, because Mark's got a face that he looks very serious, I think. It's more serious than me, but Mark is the worst giggler.
Oh, right.
And because I knew that, I remember in that scene all the time, I was taking the mick without anybody knowing, and Mark kept having a row, not a row, but a telling off from the floor manager, because I kept making him laugh. Do you remember that, Mark?
Well, yeah, that was always the case, wasn't it? Yeah, I was always laughing, but yeah, there's just a lot.
Stark, he was quite guilty. He used to like to make the people laugh, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a few naughty people there, but yeah, I do remember that scene, and I don't know quite the excitement and the thrill why we invented this idea of sort of getting out without paying. I don't quite know why we wanted to do. It was obviously your instigation.
I think it was Christopher's
my idea, not my idea. It was Christopher's idea, but I think it was to do with introducing us to the gang of lads that was shown on the clip you posted.
Oh yes, because they pleasantly said, "Let's go and get those fags. Let's go and do those fags."
That's it. And then you think at the end of an episode, this is where the writers were so clever. At the end of the episode, you saw these guys coming towards again another time, and you thought they were beating hell out of us. And then the following episode, you saw some flowers in a vase and a bleeping of a machine in a hospital, and you thought, oh, Paul Gordon, Christopher's probably got away and Gordon's probably in hospital. But what had happened is that I think my character had beaten the boys up, or we both had beaten the boys up. And they split the whole story.
I do remember that.
And I remember that. And I remember thinking how clever.
Yes. And I do remember there was one scene where I think these gang of lads turned up on the close, and the likes of Barry Grant and everybody came out to save you, and Billy Corkill.
Yeah.
You remember that scene?
They painted the house, Gordon's house, I remember.
Yes. Because obviously times were a lot more different back then. It was a lot more taboo, and
I know, and it was but we did have our support from other residents on the close, Gordon and Christopher. So that was good. That was the sort of a turn.
We didn't have any storylines, did we, Mark? For about a year, we didn't do anything. It's not until that kiss a year in. Yeah. Everything else then was a lot of other things, like I can't remember, but things that were nothing to do with sexuality, so that everybody got to invest time in us and get to like us and support us, and that's how clever they were.
Yeah. Well, we did have quite a lot of different things to do. We always every week we seemed to have a different job, didn't it? It was like a sort of sitcom, really. I mean, one week we were doing antique furniture. And you had your bicycle. You were doing bicycle repairs or something.
Doing everything. Christopher Duncan had a CV from heaven. He could do everything. And I remember one storyline was when we kidnapped your grandmother from an old people's home because she was being badly treated.
Now, I remember that storyline very well, because that was pretty shocking back in the time, back in the day.
That was quite good, because we had a bit of sort of action to do, and we're out there rescuing her from the hands of Matron. And
evil Matron. What's the Nurse Cratchit?
Yeah.
That's what she looked like.
And we sort of bunged her in a wheelchair and sort of pushed her down the high street, didn't we? We just sort of ran to the hills.
But
much to the dismay of poor Collins, though, he wasn't very impressed when you brought her back home, if I remember rightly.
No,
what the public didn't know, if you remember, Mark, because the actress that played the grandmother absolutely loved Mark and absolutely hated me. Do you remember? If I came into the rehearsal and said, "Hi, isn't it a lovely day?" she'd go, "No, it's not." And whatever Mark said, Mark walked on water, and she couldn't stand me. But on screen, we were the best of friends, and I'm so glad that nobody ever noticed, because she always wanted to rip my head off.
No, we were very naughty. We played awful games with her. Margaret Clifton, her name was. Yeah, because we sort of realised very early on. That she did hate Stifyn.
Absolutely.
So of course we just sort of played the game, and that
laughed it off.
But she was I thought she was very nice. You know, she
was brilliant in the part. But she just, you can understand. I'm a bit Marmite. You either like me or you don't, and she doesn't like Marmite, obviously.
No, she just didn't warm to you. No.
So did you ever have any sort of conflict with her, any arguments or anything, or was it just the general atmosphere, the general tone?
No. And the thing is, she was much older than me, and I would never have risen to having a full-on blown face-off with her. Yes. But it was just obvious that if I said, "Look at these green trousers," she'd say they're blue.
Because black, she'd swear black is white, kind of thing.
Yeah, she did. But she always listened to. She always listened to me.
Oh, yeah.
No matter how many times I said that Stephen's a lovely guy, she just wasn't having it. She wasn't having it.
No.
I've had a hell of a life.
Well, on that note, shall we move on to question 2?
Have we only got to question 1?
We've only got to well, you've actually answered a few of my questions, because there was a question for you about the grandmother in there, so you've answered that one for me.
Ahead of you.
Right. Oh,
we can get back to that, because it's about your book anyway, so you can give your book an unashamed plug in a bit. Okay, well, to really prick your brains, well, actually, it's not actually, because I might have cheated here, because I posted this clip to you not so long ago. Well, can you recall your very first day on set, and can you recall your very first scene? So who would like to answer first?
I'll let Stifyn go.
You'll let Stifyn go. Okay, Stifyn, we'll go with you first.
I talk so much. Okay, I remember my first scene. I remember my first and second scene. My first scene, I was trying to flirt with Paul Collins, and I was helping him fix his bike.
Yes, I can remember this. So I posted that not so long ago.
There was a lot of dodgy words in that script that I actually re-scripted, because I thought it was a bit much, because there was the new gay character coming in, and there was things like, "Oh, I think you've got one of your spokes is a bit bent." And there was all these words, and I remember thinking, I'm going to have to change these. And I remember that. And then the second scene, if you remember, Mark, we were in your kitchen, and I had to make bloody guacamole while remembering my lines.
Oh. Yeah, I remember that. I remember both those scenes. But because we had an upturned bicycle, didn't we? And you were always, because you were saying, "Oh, I think I can help you with that, Mr. Collins." You know.
Yes. That's on my CV. And I remember with the avocado, with the guacamole, because those houses were real, but the fridges were switched off so they didn't hum. We put the guacamole in the fridge in episode 2. We come back in episode 5. Somebody opens the fridge, and the guacamole properly comes out and grabs Annabel by the throat. It's still in there.
Houses only, by the way, did you feel very at home in those houses? Because I obviously looked very nice and cozy, but I can imagine it was quite a tight squeeze in them as well with the camera.
It was a tight squeeze with a full crew in there. But yeah, I mean, they were real homes, and they, real bricks and mortar, and it was quite cozy. I mean, it was cold in the winter with sort of doors open and stuff like that, so the cables could run out. But
smelly in the summer.
Yeah.
And also, do you remember that bed scene we had when they had made a hole in the wall? It was you and me in bed.
Yes.
And we had this guidebook because men could only be seen in bed, where I think you had to wear trousers underneath the sheets. And I had to turn with my back to you. Don't know where that came from.
Yes, I don't.
But that was a guidebook that we'd had.
Yeah, there was a little pamphlet for good behaviour on sets between homosexual actors. It was the most peculiar thing. But yeah, we just got on with it. But yeah, they did make a hole in the wall. What was the hole in the wall for? Camera?
The camera to poke through, because there was no room for two men, a bed and a cameraman.
No, well, they should have thought of that, shouldn't they? But yeah, so yeah, that was all going on. But the houses were quite comfortable in their own way. Yeah, they're all right. But they're quite small. They're smaller than they probably look on screen.
Well, yeah, I know a lot of people that said.
And we had a garage as well, didn't we? Hello, you've all frozen. Yes, I'm just talking here. And
are you there?
Is anybody there?
Oh yes, I can see you, Mark. But your screen's froze. Oh, we've got the first miss.
Everyone else, Steve.
Oh, Mark, it was all going brilliantly until you've ruined it.
Oh, you're back. You're back.
Was that?
You're there. You keep coming and going.
Yes.
Do I?
Yes. A bit like me in the episodes of Brookside.
Yeah. Yes, this is a recurring interview. Yeah.
Yes.
But yes. So, what was the? Yeah. What was?
Sorry, Mark. Yes, it was. Can you recall your very first day on set and your very first scene?
Yes. Well, I can, and it was actually the first scene that appeared in the episode, and it was actually done chronologically. So it was my arrival in a taxi from France, because the character of Gordon had been in France for a few years, I think, a couple of years.
Yes.
And the producers decided to bring this character back, obviously specifically to address the gay issue. And so, yeah, my first scene was me arriving in a taxi with Cecile, who was...
Cecile?
With Cecile, who was my French friend.
And,
I remember watching this.
Yes, I was in the back of the Cecile, and she was played by Pierre Henderson, who actually lives in Brighton, so we've sort of seen each other since. So we were back, and of course the parents, Paul and Annabel, are looking through the net curtains, and see me getting out of the taxi, and they're a little bit concerned because they're a bit worried I might have turned in my time in France, and then they see Cecile getting out and me sort of holding on to her, and their eyes light up and there's a big smile on their faces because I'm not obviously gay.
Gordon's not gay. Yes.
I've come back with a girl, so they're pleased, and it's here he is. And then so we did that scene. So that was my very first thing. So that was a kind of a loosener up, really, because I didn't really have to say anything. I just managed to get out of the taxi without tripping over and making myself. And then it was into the living room for tea, with the parents and Cecile and myself. So yeah, that was my first couple of scenes. But I was very, very nervous, and looking back at it, I was kind of a bit, like I just froze on the Zoom thing just now. I was a bit like that, a little bit wooden, but yeah, it was lovely just to be up and running it and doing it. But Cecile was only there for a couple of episodes. Sadly, she was a good character, I think, but she had to go.
Make way for me, Mark.
I was going to say, make way for Christopher, of course.
Yeah, I had to wait for a couple of years, but
worth waiting for, though, eh?
Once he arrived.
Well, actually, saying that, I looked at some 1985 episodes when I was searching for clips not so long ago, and it was about a year before yourself had actually joined the cast, and Annabel and Paul were actually discussing Gordon, the possibility of Gordon being gay back then. Yes. I think Paul Collins' name was, "You don't know that our son is abnormal." But he was quite right-wing, wasn't he, Paul Collins?
Well, for about 3 years in Brookside.
He was, but he was also gay.
I didn't.
Paul for about 3 years, was unable to say the word homosexual. Do you remember this?
Brilliant.
That for every episode used to end with him saying, I just worry that Gordon might be a
Homer. Yeah.
And he could never get the word out. But I'd never heard of the abnormal one, I must say. No, that's brilliant. But yeah, so that was my early, those are my early episodes anyway.
Okay.
But I think Gordon did have other interests before Christopher arrived on the scene. Don't
upset me now.
Well, it's 30 years. I mean, I've waited a long time.
Elephants never forget.
But I don't think Christopher was the first, and he certainly wasn't the last. I mean, no. After you went, there were others. Yeah.
But you've changed.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Oh,
I know. I shouldn't have said. I thought after 30 years, I think a lot of water has passed under the bridge. But
no chance of Gordon and Chris getting back together now, of course.
Well, not without Brookie.
Not without Brookie, if it ever comes back.
No, there should have been a spin-off, but it just didn't happen, really.
No. Okay, should we move to question 3, guys?
Yes.
Oh, hang on. Well, we'll skip this one because you've both already answered it. Have you watched Brookside prior to being cast? So we'll move on to that.
Yes.
So, yes, this is quite an interesting one to both of you.
We'll soon see.
How did you find the transition of going into a well-known TV series like Brookside and then suddenly finding yourselves recognised by people on the streets? I can imagine it was quite a kind of change for you. Who would like to go first?
Well, yes. I mean, it was because, as I say, we'd moved to Brighton a year or so before, and I was out, going to shopping, familiar shops and stuff, and just chatting to people. And then immediately, the first episode of my episode was shown. When I next went out, people were kind of, "Oh my God, I didn't know that's what you did. I didn't know you were an actor. I didn't know you were in Brookside. How fantastic!" And yeah, it just kind of, I'd never experienced that before. Just the fact that I watched myself on television, go out the next day, and it felt like everybody was just knew you and were talking to you or aware of you or just looking at you in shops, thinking, "Is that that really looks like Gordon?" And it was a really unusual experience. I mean, I would have thought, I don't know, every 2 out of every 5 people seemed to know me. It was and that then went on for quite a few years and a few years after I'd left as well, and then it obviously died away. But yeah, it was quite a weird feeling.
I can
because
imagine.
I'd been acting for years, but obviously nobody in the theatre necessarily, an audience doesn't really see you out and about. But that's the power of soap and TV.
Okay, and Stifyn.
Well, what I was going to say is that there was only 4 channels then, so viewing figures were much higher than what even your big juggernaut programs on the telly are now. I mean, sometimes there was 18 million viewers, if I remember.
For Brookside.
But I'd been in a soap opera in Wales first, so I'd sort of experienced it in a certain way because I speak Welsh as well, so I work in both languages. Yeah. And I'd experienced people recognizing me for maybe 3 or 4 years before that, but not on the scale of Brookside. So that was, but I did have a problem at the time because I hadn't actually admitted to be, I hadn't come out at the time.
Oh, really?
I didn't come out until after the kiss and after I'd done the Clause 28 march with Ian McKellen and Michael Cashman. I mean, wow. People like Mark and people knew in Brookside and work, but I'd never told friends or family. And I didn't actually come out until I was 26. And what was bizarre was, the kiss went on the 9 o'clock news because the writers were so clever in writing that kiss went out the night before the Clause 28 march. So that's how clever I thought the writers were. And I don't think I didn't understand. I don't know whether you did, Mark. I didn't see any significance. I didn't understand.
No.
The importance of anything. I didn't really understand because I was so busy trying not to let the whole of Wales know that I was gay because I'd already was recognised here. It was quite a tricky one for me at that time. So after the kiss and after the when I spoke in Manchester and there was the world press there and the pictures in the Guardian and it was on the news and blah, 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 that's when I thought, oh, I think I better come out now and go and tell my mother. So my coming out was very, very odd. And I learned so much from the writers because there was so many things that I learned as that were handy for me to know as a gay man for later that the writers had alerted us to in the writing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still preempted it thing.
Because really, your storyline was very groundbreaking, wasn't it?
Well, it was the first gay kiss on British telly, apparently.
Yes.
But at the time, as Stifyn said, you know, we were just kind of in that bubble, really.
Yeah,
especially
you were in the moment. You didn't understand the significance of it until, obviously.
As well.
I don't think I did.
Remember what it was, Mark, but you had to put a badge onto me, and then I pecked you on the cheek.
Yes.
I remember the scene.
I don't remember the scene. All I remember about the scene is you stuck a badge on me and the pin went straight into my nipple.
Yes.
I've never been the same since, Mark.
Yeah, I don't know I can't remember what the badge was, but it was obviously highly...
Oh, I do remember now. Yeah, you used, I think, didn't you didn't Gordon work in a supermarket or something and he insisted on wearing that badge?
Yeah.
Gay pride or something, or to advertise the fact that he was gay. I'm sure it's something like that. Anyway.
Yeah,
I don't remember the kiss, but I remember the pain in my nipple.
Yeah.
I bet you do.
Yeah, but I do remember it. That was in the living room, and I remember you were holding a stick of celery.
I always do that.
Yeah. I think you were after your guacamole again, but
yes.
I think Christopher Duncan was always eating. You know, he always had something in his hand. But
was eating and cooking. Yeah,
he was always cooking. He was either cooking or sorting out his bicycle chain, or having
chopping down wood.
But I do remember that. But I don't. The significance wasn't.
No, it wasn't significant to us. It was just very clever writing and
very
significant. Even today, I get people who grown men who were telling me, "You guys, your storyline helped me so much when I was young," and I'm going, "Oh my God."
Yeah, that's good though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I was too young at the time. I was only 8, so I just saw you both as friends. I didn't know. Yeah. Sweet innocent boy that I was.
Is that why you've got the lighting on so low?
That's why I've got the lighting on so low. It is actually very low. I don't know why I've got all the lights on me, so I don't know. I should have done it.
Put some money in the meter.
Well, I look better in the dark anyway, so I'm told quite often, actually. Oh, this is yes. I'm just going to put my glasses on while I read this.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, obviously, this is to both of you, obviously being gay back then, as we've just discussed, was widely considered taboo and controversial. So can you remember, because I'm quite interested to know this, but even though we've discussed a little bit of it, the public's reaction to your story and indeed the media's response? Because I have to ask this because I don't know if you read what I wrote on Facebook earlier, because Piers Morgan, ever so graciously at the time, decided to write a story about the two guys in EastEnders. Michael Cashman played one of them.
Lovely man.
And wrote the headline, EastEnders.
Yeah.
So gracious. So this was 1986, of course. He has since apologised for that. And obviously we were living in different times then, but obviously.
Exactly.
So how did you find that? Did you ever come across some sort of animosity or any homophobia as such from the public or the press?
No, I can't honestly say that. Not homophobia. No, I know that people were, some people did sort of stand back. I wouldn't say they crossed the street from me, but they were a little bit kind of aloof, a little bit wary, probably.
Right.
It was, something really quite abnormal, as Paul Collins might say. But apart from that, and obviously Mickey taking and joshing around in pubs, certainly in Liverpool, you go into a pub, you're going to get some treatment.
Yeah.
But that was to be expected, and I quite enjoyed it, and I kind of played up to it and went along with it. But I can't remember any incidents either in Brighton, London, or Liverpool where I felt unsafe or threatened. Not at all. No, I always felt quite secure. But I know that people were surprised if they saw me out with Liz, my wife, or my one child, as we had then, I think, or just about to have two. People often said to Liz, is this your sister? To me, is this your sister? Is this your niece? No. They couldn't quite get the head. Which now is it. That's what ages it. It just feels like a lifetime away. And the press, the media, were a little bit Piers Morganish as he might have been then. They weren't anti me at all, but they couldn't work it out, really. They just thought it was such a wonderful story that I was playing a gay guy, but I was married, and they just thought this was so original.
That you're just an actor,
Well, that completely, that completely.
I mean, did you have any sort of? Were you quite nervous about? It's a silly question, I suppose, but obviously you had no apprehensions about playing a homosexual, obviously.
No, well, of course not. But no, I mean, it's a good question because, but then I do remember actually at my final interview, the producer up in his office, Stuart Doughty, who I was very fond of, who's a lovely guy, very good to me. And I think the last thing he said was, "Do you mind playing a homosexual character? Gordon's gay." And I thought it was kind of odd question, but I just said, "Well, no."
Yes.
No, I mean, I didn't push any further because obviously I wanted the job, so I didn't want to start challenging him. Say, why would you ask that question? And a few years later, when Gordon had the AIDS storyline, he had the test, and
yes,
which was he's the big one really for him, the big storyline.
I learned a lot from that storyline.
Well, I just remember it all came out in the press that was going to be dealt with, the AIDS and Gordon, and on a Sunday evening the phone rang at home because no mobiles then, and it was the producer Stuart Doughty just phoning to say, "Mark, you may have seen in the press that about the AIDS storyline with your character Gordon." He said, "I just want you to be reassured that Gordon's going to be okay." So.
Because that was another first soaps, wasn't it? The AIDS storyline, if I remember rightly, anyway. For Brookside was the first to tackle AIDS. The first soap to tackle AIDS, I should say.
It was. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't like to be.
I do remember. Do you remember us having this one storyline which really helped me in my real life after, where we couldn't get insurance for a mortgage? Because we're gay.
Yes. I do. Only because I've seen these episodes quite recently.
That nearly happened to me afterwards.
Oh, no way.
In real life. But the opposite to this one thing that, I said about being hit over the head by that lady with a handbag because of the killing of the dog. That was only what I thought was homophobia. But I never forget going to meet Mark and his wife and the kids in Brighton. And I went to the local post office around the corner or sweet shop and took his kids to buy them some sweets. And I never forget, obviously, there were people that knew Mark's kids and then saw that they realized that Mark was playing a gay character, but he was straight. Yes. But then in skips me with a big smile with one of Mark's children on my hip and the other one holding my hand. And I remember the person in the shop being very, very sort of startled.
Yeah.
But again, no antiness. But then again, we've got to remember, Mark and I are both very tall.
Yes. I always felt I was the David Furnish to Stifyn's Elton John.
Absolutely.
Does that mean I've got a louder jacket? Put the vodka down, Mark.
Get the vodka down.
It's fizzy water.
going off what we've just been talking about now, actually, this next question is quite what we've just been talking about. Because obviously there are those that confuse fiction with reality and believe soaps are actually real. Did you, I mean, what were you, apart from, did you have lots of, any strange fan encounters? Apart from the lady hitting you over the head, of course, Stifyn, were there?
I remember, I don't know if it was our characters, Mark, you may remember, but I remember there was a point where somebody's character had some bad luck and didn't have money, and there was a problem because some child had saved their pocket money for weeks and sent the money to Brookside in an envelope with no address for us to send the money back.
Oh, bless them.
I remember that.
I know John McArdle had said something when John McArdle was John McArdle's character, Billy Corkle, when he was employed. I think there were people that were sending him through offers of jobs and offers to put some money for him and stuff. And
the funniest thing I remember is that a lot of people used to recognize me in the street, but didn't want to admit that they watched the series and they didn't watch soaps.
Oh, well, there's still a general snob.
I used to say, well, how do you recognise me?
Yes, that happened a lot. People that didn't want to sort of acknowledge.
Brookside, I know you're on it. Well, how do you know? How do you know that?
Yeah, so or they tell you that they don't, they know who you are, but they don't like the programme, and well, thanks very much.
Well, I sometimes get people saying that when I post a clip. They're like, "Oh, I didn't like Brookside," and I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, thank you for telling me. If you just want to move on now and just leave us to it." Well, I don't know why people helpfully have to come and tell us why they don't like it, but there are very few and far between, to be honest with you. It's normally a general. I don't believe they actually watched it properly anyway. I think it's just a general, like you said, a snobbishness towards soaps in general.
Yeah.
Well, obviously the industry was a lot different back then as well. Brookside was on twice a week then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And the omnibus on the Saturday.
Oh yes. Well, that's when I used to watch it on the Saturday afternoon.
Yeah. Catch up on it.
Of course, now they're on every day now, aren't they? The industry's changed quite a lot because I know I was speaking to John McArdle and he said they don't actually have rehearsals or read-throughs now with soaps. And obviously you guys did, didn't you, in your time in Brookside?
Yeah, we didn't have that much rehearsal, but there was rehearsal compared to now.
Did you go for read-throughs? Because I know some of the cast used to go to the Everyman for read-throughs now.
I never did.
No? Oh, this must have been before. You might.
No.
Mark and I were both living very far from the close. So they'd have to pay for us to get there. So we would rehearse, we'd rehearse next week's scenes. We were filming this week's. While I lived in the Adelphi 3 nights a week.
We just sort of learnt our lines, before going up there, and then just did a run through with the cameras in the houses or garden or wherever it was, and shot. Yeah.
Well, I don't think they even do that now.
But it didn't feel rushed as far as I can remember. It felt like there's plenty of time to do stuff, but it just kept moving.
Yeah.
But it was always a little bit frustrating. I often seem to find myself shooting my scenes last thing on a Friday afternoon, which was, a bit frustrating because you just wanted to go home. But there we are. But it was good. Happy times. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Well,
Stifyn, sorry, have you finished what you were saying? Sorry.
I have no idea.
Yeah, you can't remember, can you?
No.
Right. Well, this next question then is.
Yeah.
I know you said, Stifyn, you couldn't remember the stories before, but this next question is, what would you both consider to be your favourite storyline and scene? So, who would like to go first?
Well, Stifyn, go.
Yours being nice. Okay, Stifyn.
I don't, to be honest, I remember very little of that time. I remember very little about my life because my life's a bit bonkers and always has been. And when, as you mentioned, the book that I've written, and I've written a whole episode about Brookside in it. Yes. I had to work really hard to open up this. And in fact, there's more stuff coming out now. Now I'm seeing Mark and hearing him talk. I think
all back to you.
My favourite storyline was us bringing Lucky, the dog, to the close, and anybody thinking that a dog called Lucky was going to end up being Lucky, had another thing coming because 12 weeks later we squashed him.
Yes, poor dog.
Or as that lady thought, we squashed many dogs because actors never get it right.
That's
But
right.
I think that was a storyline that stayed with me. However, some of those political storylines about getting insurance and having the anti-gayness and all that did help me in my personal life later on. But what I really remember most about Brookside is just Mark and I constantly laughing.
Yes, well,
this is the thing. Calm down now, and then action. That's what I remember.
Because obviously, when I spoke to Michael and John a couple of months ago, I know they said obviously they don't really look back and think about their stories and stuff. It's obviously the behind-the-scenes camaraderie between the cast and the laughs that you had and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
What about you, Mark?
Yeah, well, I, as I had already mentioned, the AIDS storyline was crucial. I always enjoyed any moments that we could get some location shooting. That was always, because it was always nice to get away from the close. I didn't have an awful lot of it, but anything that we did was good fun. The rescuing Granny from the care home.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that story, by the way. Yeah,
I did enjoy the storyline where Annabel had an affair with.
I love that storyline. Yes, but he turned out to be quite nasty, didn't he?
Yeah,
Gordon was his car salesman. That was it.
Well, that's what I enjoyed. He was a second-hand car salesman.
Yes.
And I was Gordon was absolutely furious with Annabelle and deeply upset, obviously. But he he loved his mum, and this man had to be dispatched. So Gordon somehow got a job working for him on the forecourt of his second-hand car showroom in Widnes.
Oh yes.
He got the chance to go and shoot in Widnes, which was as far away as I got, I think. But then the idea was that how was Gordon going to sort of get one over on this boyfriend of Annabelle's, and so they had Gordon. The writers had Gordon doing secret offers to customers, selling them cars for £1.
Yes, I remember. A lady just driving off, and then he caught you, didn't he?
He caught me. I sold a few, and he just said, "What's going?" I said, "Well, I don't know." Anyway, he found out, but it was it was good fun, and all hell broke loose. But I enjoyed that, the care home, and the nightclub scenes, anything that took us out. But then I also liked the close, intimate scenes with the family when Chris was there and when Annabelle and Paul were there. Just the full scale where nothing really happened. It's almost like kitchen sink drama from the mid 1950s. It's just it was just ordinary life, which was
like an observation fly on the wall sort of thing in the 80s, Brookside, wasn't it?
Well, exactly, and I think that was one of its strengths.
Definitely. Yeah.
Once it started to get away from that and sort of become slightly epic.
Well, it was all shot on one camera as well, so it was like doing a film. That's why we took a lot of time, because we all had to do every scene many, many, many times.
Yeah, one camera. Yeah, absolutely.
So Mark finally got it right.
Yeah. I think that's
horrible, isn't it?
That's why they always put me last thing Friday afternoon, so I wouldn't keep us waiting. It's just. But yes, but it was. There were lots of good storylines, and the AIDS one, and the getting the own back on the car salesman, and the stuff with Chris was all good stuff.
Yeah, good fun.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And oh yes, we're looking forward to this one as well. Can you both tell us about working with the late, great Jim Wiggans and Doreen Sloane, who, of course, played your on-screen mum and dad, Paul and Annabel Collins, who were there right from the very beginning, Mark? And
Mark, you should do this, because you worked with them far more than I did, but you go ahead.
Well, I did. I mean, and they were... I can honestly say I got on with them both extremely well. I really did love them both. And they were very welcoming to me right from that first audition that I did with them through to the sad end, really.
Yes.
but yeah, and Doreen was very supportive of me to the producers after that audition. You know, she said she and Jim really did, you know, fly my flag and say that I was the one that they would like to play Gordon. So that always kind of warmed me and moved me a bit. But yeah, I always got on extremely well with both of them. I mean, Doreen, I sort of socialised with a little bit outside of the close, but not so much Jim. But you know, we just had a great time, and they were very warm, and you know, a good time was had by all. They had quite an unusual relationship. You know, they weren't the closest, but then they on other occasions they were inseparable.
Well, solid couple, weren't they?
Absolutely, they were totally different. Certainly politically, I mean, they were complete opposites. But somewhere in the middle, they came together, and they didn't really speak off set, except at lunch. Every single day, the 4 years that I was there, they always got together to do the Daily Telegraph crossword in the canteen, and it was always quite moving because, you know, they might bicker about each other separately, but then they came together for that kind of one moment, and also when they were working together as well. But they respected each other, and they did have a love for each other. But I certainly loved them both. I really missed Doreen, you know, enormously when she passed away.
Yeah.
And also, they were very, very different to their characters, weren't they?
Yes.
Oh, well, I was going to ask that. I don't know if it's a little bit probing, because I heard Jim Wiggans was actually a proud lefty in real life. I don't know if you can answer that or.
Well, that's what I was saying. They were completely opposite ends of the spectrum. So Jim was, left of left, and Doreen wasn't. she was completely the other way. But
the four of us together used to have a good laugh, didn't we?
But they just met in the middle, and you know, they kind of took the mickey out of each other and out of their politics, and I think it just worked, and therefore it worked on screen. They absolutely did get on. It's just they were very different, and you know, had their own lives. They didn't really I don't think they did socialise outside the set, unless there was a charity thing or whatever to do. But they were both. I both really did like them, you know, very, very much. Yeah.
And they were great characters as well, weren't they? Because they were there right at the very beginning, and I can imagine their characters, you know, Paul and Annabel, sort of looking at the Grants and the Corkills as kind of rough and rowdy compared to, you know, the Collins were a lot more refined, you know, in comparison to those families.
Yeah,
they stuck out, didn't they? Which is quite good.
They did, but I thought I always liked Annabel because she always appeared very gracious, and she always seemed to want to, she made a heartfelt effort to try and get along with her new neighbours. Whereas Paul Collins, I know he sort of kind of like looked down on them as the rest of them as riffraff. He brought something to the role that because I can imagine me and somebody like Paul Collins in real life probably clashing, but he did bring, despite him being right-wing, his character, he did bring something to it that made you like him, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. He was very personable, and he was, he's just a very good actor, basically.
Yeah.
And it was, and that just sort of came across. But yeah, he got that beautifully. The fact that he'd been brought down in his social status somewhat.
Yes. Yeah.
Having lived on the close. And it was just a brilliant sort of concept, and that sort of dynamic. The dynamic between the Collins and the other people on the close was what made it. I mean, you look at all those houses now and those people that inhabited those houses. They were such rich but real characters.
Absolutely, that's exactly what I was just about to say. I think
they did major storylines to enjoy watching it. You know, I could enjoy watching a whole episode of Harry Cross and Ray Dunbobbin, who played, what was his character? Ray Dunbobbin.
They're brilliant.
Ralph, yeah.
Ralph. Yeah, I liked Ralph. Harry and Ralph. They were.
You could just watch them, and it'd be like watching a Pinter play or something. You know, it's just, nothing particularly had to happen. It was just.
Well, that's it. You didn't always have Brookside in especially in the very early episodes. They didn't always, not like nowadays, where every soap ends with a dramatic cliffhanger or anything. Sometimes it would just be about, you know, ordinary, everyday today things. And I love that's what I think definitely made Brookside special, the different classes of people, because you had a different social sets with the Grants and then the Collins and obviously Heather and, well, in the very early days, her husband was Roger. So it was quite a lively bunch all together on this brand new housing estate, and magical, and what made it work, I think.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think that's it. That's it in a nutshell. Yeah.
Stephen, would you like to add anything about working with Jim and Doreen?
Yeah, I never socialised with them outside, because I was either rushing in on the train, or I would, when I was working on the close, I would stay in the Adelphi. And of course they would, if I'm right, Mark, they'd go home. So we saw each other on the set, but all I do remember is whether it was just me and Mark, or me, Mark, and either of them or both of them, we were always very, very jolly, and we always had a laugh. Yeah.
There was never any difficulties between the four of us. We just had a great time. And it was just a very happy period. But yes, like Stephen, I didn't live up there. I was commuting to backwards and forwards. So I used to stay at the Adelphi, or I think it was the St George's, or other hotels. And Doreen, she lived on the Wirral, and Jim, I'm not quite sure where Jim lived actually, but I never went to Jim's place. But yeah, so Stephen and I socialised and what have you when we were up there, which was great. And I did with Doreen to a certain extent.
Both of us spent most of our times on trains going there and back. And sometimes, because it was done on one camera, you'd do a 5.5 hour journey just to walk past a window in somebody else's scene. And then get back on the train.
And go back and then come back. And
that's
a lot of commuting then, obviously, every weekend that you...
But it was a good time to learn your lines.
Yes.
And your accent. If you had to learn a new accent, you could lock yourself in the toilet like I did.
Well, I bet you've got the Scouse accent nailed now, haven't you?
Only just.
Okay, well, thank you for that, guys. I enjoyed hearing about that. Right, Mark, this is for you. Because in 1990, you got to work alongside the late Catherine Cartledge, who played your on-screen sister, Lucy Collins. She was the original one who was there in the beginning. Can you recall some memories of working with her? Sadly, no longer with us.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this today. The Collins family really, they're sort of gone mostly, and obviously Jim and Doreen and Margaret and Lucky and also.
Oh,
Lucky! We're never going to get over that, are we?
but
I should be so lucky.
But I do remember working with Catherine, and she went ridiculously too young. She died of pneumonia literally a few years after Brookside. So I don't quite know how old she was, but I guess 30 or something. And I liked her enormously, but I was quite terrified working with her on the set, because on Brookside she was you just said, the original Lucy. So I thought, she's gonna, she's used to working with the previous Gordon, so she might not warm to me. I shouldn't have thought that, because she's, professional actors just get on with it. But
that's what you thought at the time, yeah.
But also she'd done a lot of stuff with films with Mike Leigh, and I knew she was one of Stephen Burkoff's favourite actors as well. So she'd done this kind of really, really good sort of iconic work, and that which impressed me. And I just thought, as a sort of jobbing actor, she's going to find me out, really. So I was kind of apprehensive about meeting her, but when it came to it, I was quite pleased, because I managed to make her corpse, almost as much as I did Stephen. Really, it was she had a great sense of humour. She just laughed a lot, and we both laughed. And I think this is the theme of it. I know it sounds boring to some people. Say, "Oh God, can they get any work done?" Of course, we did, but we did have a lot of fun, and And I used to, sort of have a drink with her and, socialize a bit out of the set. We were all staying up there. So she was lovely. She was a really good actress. Yeah. And it was devastating to hear that she'd gone. But she surprised me. I thought she might be, something that I wasn't expecting. I didn't quite know what I was expecting, but she was great and much missed. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, and now one for Stifyn. Thank you for that, Mark. I have to put these glasses back on again. Well, this is actually to both of you now, so I'll let you take it in turns. Going to throw some names at you, both to see if you can remember working with and or socialising with the following cast members. So
this is embarrassing.
Yeah, well, no. So number one, I'm going to throw it between yourselves. The lovely Amanda Burton. Who'd like to go first? Yes, Stifyn.
Yeah, I think I only slightly overlapped with Amanda.
So yes, she would have been around.
So she wasn't there. I didn't get to know her very well, but because I'd watched Brookside from the very, very beginning, of course, I was a big fan. But she seemed absolutely lovely. But I think Mark may know her better than me.
Well, I no. I mean, a lot of the other actors, the regular actors, obviously you knew quite well off set, in the green room or whatever, in the canteen. But I didn't really have many substantial scenes with the regular actors. To be quite,
it
was like you said, the Collins were quite in their own bubble, weren't they? Really.
The clip you put out the other day when Amanda was eating a sausage. I think that's probably the only scene.
I think with a lot of those sort of those actors, the regulars, the real regular actors, we only ever did scenes with them, in the garden when there was a barbecue or when there was a Christmas party or something like that. I don't really recall having any scenes, with Sheila Grant or Bobby or John Billy Corkill. We did in passing. They used to have a chat or say, "All right, Gordon," or but I can honestly, there was nothing substantial.
No.
That if there were, I'd remember it. And it was like that with I did with Bill Dean with Harry Cross. I think we had some stuff there in their house, which was quite fun. But I would have.
Didn't they go on holiday and I rented their house out?
Very probably, yes. Very straight in, but we did. I think you did. I think you did still get your feet under the table there. I mean, it was an unlikely. You're an unlikely lodger, weren't you? But
yes.
Yeah. But it was so. Well, I think we would have liked more scenes with the rest of the close, but it was really just in passing, or they were in passing. Yeah, and that goes for most of them. Like
okay, so you might not want to. I don't know if you've got any
charity events.
We
work.
Did outside. I mean, I don't think we worked with those actors an awful lot, but outside we did the charity things or hung out a bit, and then they were all great. We all got along very well. I think we were sort of stuck out on Brookside Close. It was literally just on the outskirts of Liverpool, and we were there, and we all just got on. We went there to do the job, and then we all made our way home or caught a train or drove back down the motorway. So I don't remember not getting on with anyone.
Yeah. Oh, great. Okay. Well, obviously you've answered my question, because the other names I was going to throw at you were Ricky Tomlinson, and you've answered this, Sue Johnson and Paul Usher. I do recall one scene of Gordon and Paul Usher, because he went out with Lucy at one point, didn't he? She was played by a different actress.
Yeah.
The previous year, I think.
Maggie Saunders played her in the middle years.
Yes.
Before I arrived as Gordon.
Ah, right. Okay. All right, then. Well, I'll move on to the next one, because did either of you watch Brookside after you'd left? And have either of you visited the Close ever since?
I watched it for quite a long time afterwards, but I was working in musicals in the West End. Yeah. So I'm very up with telly. But I did a series based on like auto story, the ridiculous things I've done, and we did a documentary for television here, and therefore with the documentary about 2 years ago, The Close, which was very, and it seemed tiny.
I have been told that when people go to The Close, they're really amazed how smaller it looks on
I don't know whether I was half the height last time when I was working there, but when I turned up, it seemed tiny compared to what I remember it.
Yeah.
Well,
how about you, Mark? Have you?
No, I haven't been back to the Close at all in all that time. But yeah, what was the first part of the question?
Oh yes, and obviously, did you watch Brookside after?
Oh, I watched it until I wasn't in it anymore.
Yeah.
Like most of the nation, Mark.
Yeah.
That's a very honest answer.
Oh yeah, but I watched it. No, that sounds a bit cynical. Actually, I watched it, and then I was actually on tour. I was doing a play. So obviously it was just impossible really to kind of keep in touch with it. I was in it for a few. I think they were episodes shot about 6 weeks, in advance. So I sort of saw out 4 or 5 weeks and saw my last scene in it. And I think the last time I saw myself, it wasn't actually me. It was, as we were talking right at the beginning of the conversation, it was Gordon on a motorbike with his helmet on.
Yes.
And they, he was doing whatever he was doing, but it certainly wasn't me. And I thought, well, I think that's a sign, I think that's, I think I'll check out now. So
I remember a funny story. When I went back to The Close, we went back to film something just outside the house, which was Gordon Collins's home, where I lodged on and off. And we knocked the door, and this lovely lady who lives there now said, no, coach, I'm not going to do the accent and I'll never work again. But basically she said, no, of course you can have your photograph taken. Come in and have a look around if you want. And I said, no, I wouldn't do that. And she said, my husband's really excited because apparently in this house was the first lesbian kiss ever on television. And it really turns my husband on. And I said, well, would you like to tell your husband that I am one of those lesbians? And her face dropped.
Oh, so at least the residents were quite welcoming to you then, because I can imagine it's like a tourist spot.
She was. There was another one where the Brookside sign was, and I think, mind you, you wouldn't want to live in a house where somebody's queuing outside to have their photograph taken all day long.
No.
And then I turn up with a film crew.
Oh, yes. Well, I've heard that people knock on the door of, I think it was number 10, where Trevor Dorjas was buried, and people want to go in and basically have a look where Trevor was buried. They're convinced it was actually really real, and now he's been dug up quite a long time now. But people,
showbiz, eh?
Yeah. So, okay, well, we'll move on to now this one's for you, Mark. In your post-Brookside career, I gather you directed and performed as a one-man show, The Man with the Golden Gun, based on the life of Ian Fleming.
Yeah, The Man with the Golden Pen, yeah.
Golden Pen, sorry, I didn't, sorry.
No, Ian Fleming wrote the Man with the Golden Gun. But yes, it was, I didn't direct it, I wrote it and acted in it. So it's a one-man show about Ian Fleming, which I did for, I didn't do it for a while after Brookside. After Brookside, I went back to the theatre and did a lot of touring. I went back to Liverpool once with Danny LaRue. But anyway, you don't know
story.
We'll do this again, Ian. I'll tell you all about it. But
wow, that must be fun.
Yeah, but we were doing a show together. But I became known as one of Danny's boys. But anyway, I won't ruin all these gags on you now. But yes, I did The Man with the Golden Pen about Ian Fleming. So I toured it for a couple of years, one-man show, and that's all kept me going. So since then, I've done quite a lot of writing plays, but I've done a lot for Radio 4, BBC Radio 4. So I've written quite a few plays for them, and short stories and what have you. So yeah, I got into writing, about 20 5 years ago, and it's just something I want to keep doing, keep pursuing, really.
Do you find that more satisfying than acting, or?
Sorry?
Do you find writing more satisfying than acting, or?
Well, yeah. I mean, the honest answer is, whatever I'm able to earn money at is what I find most satisfying, if I'm quite honest. I mean, I love writing, but I love acting and the directing that I've done as well. I enjoy that too. I just like to be doing something. So that's at the moment. It's all quite, the last 6 months have been fairly frustrating, just trying to get things that have been postponed going again, or trying to get fresh things happening. But yeah, I do enjoy writing, but I'd like to do more of it.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Mark. For you, Stifyn, because we're coming to the last few questions now, but we do have a few fun. We've been going for nearly an hour and a half now, by the way. I hope I'm not keeping you guys. Stifyn, I gather you. I have to put my glasses on. Sorry. In more recent times, you toured with your own one-man show. Was that quite recent?
2 shows I've done. I did a show called Shut Your Mouth. That's because I never do. Which is this anecdotal, sort of funny, stand-up-y stories of all the ridiculous things that have happened in my life. And that went well, and I toured that all over. And then that went so well that I thought I should do another one. So I did another one called No Shame, of which I have none. So I then toured that. I toured them in English and in Welsh.
Yeah.
And they went really well. I did the documentary of the making of one. And then I was approached to write a book with some of the stories in. So I wrote an autobiography, the first autobiography ever to be written in 2 languages together. So
what's the title of your autobiography? Good. So you're going to give it a plug.
So that's the English autobiography, and that is the Welsh autobiography. So it's called Out With It in English, Allan a Fo in Welsh, and they're back to back with loads of pictures. And I think there's a picture of Mark in it somewhere. That can be had on Amazon or on my website, mrproducer.co.uk, and I can squiggle a message in there. Jot it down, Mark, jot it down. He's got it tattooed on his arm anyway.
That's amazon.co.uk for Stifyn's autobiography. I mean, Mark, would you consider writing an autobiography?
I'd rather Stifyn wrote my autobiography.
What would he write?
Well, be funnier than what I could write about myself, and he'd make it up, and it would sound much better.
Yes, but what I don't remember, I make up.
Yeah.
Well, I've just got a couple of questions from some fans, if that's okay. Once for you, Mark.
Go on.
The next one is for both of you, don't worry. I suppose it's quite an obvious question. This is actually from my friend Chris Thacker. Obviously, were you disappointed? Because us, as the general public, were obviously, but the Collins family were written out after Doreen Sloane very sadly passed away.
Well, yes. I mean, yes. To be quite honest, I mean, it was
quite abrupt, wasn't it?
It was a two-edged thing, really, because obviously Doreen was, she was off for quite a few months, and then she came back to do some final scenes, and it was terribly sad just to see somebody that one was very fond of just kind of disappearing, really, and when she died. We obviously went to the funeral, and I attended the memorial service some weeks after. But yeah, the Collins family were pretty swiftly dispatched, which was difficult. I'd been there 4 years, over 4 years, and I'd sort of. All actors will say this, but this is true. I was sort of thinking, oh gosh, what's going to happen? Am I just going to stay here and do Brookside for another year and another year after that, or should I, attempt to do something else? I was only 30 or something. Should I go out and see what else is there on the back of having some sort of profile? And that's what I thought. But then I went to the producer's office, Vanessa Whitburn. and they offered me another year, and I said thank you very much. I'll have that. And I would do exactly the same again now. And I said thank you very much. And then Doreen passed away, and obviously that that contract couldn't happen.
No.
So I don't think I'd even begun. I don't think I'd even signed it. So that was when I was called to the to Phil Redmond's office, and that's where he said, we're sorry, Mark, we're going to have to write you out, but we are going to honour whatever it was the episodes that you would have filmed. We will pay you for those, for which I thought was highly reasonable, because I hadn't signed anything. Very, very, honest, good thing to have done. But just to tell you, and this is absolutely true, that was the first time I ever spoke with Phil Redmond.
Really?
It was the first and last time I'd ever spoken to him. I never spoke the entire time. I don't think I hadn't avoided him. I hope he wasn't avoiding me. But I actually walked into his office to pick up my P45, so to speak. And I said to him, it's really ironic, this, Phil, because it's the first time we've spoken. He said, yeah, I know. He said, I don't know why that's happening. One knew why, and it was not. It sort of didn't help really, but it professionally it didn't help. But it was comforting to know that they kind of wanted the character for another year at least, and that the character still had life and stories in him. But it was counterbalanced by the dreadful sadness of Doreen. I got it.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Mark. Two questions for Stifyn and Mark. There's a Kieran Mahoney. He's asked for if you could both say hello to him, by the way.
To who, Kieran?
Kieran Mahoney, yes.
Hello, Kieran. How are you? I know you can't answer me. Well, you may be, but I can't hear you.
That was for both of you. Okay. And he's asked...
Sorry, I don't want to disappoint Kieran. So hi, Kieran. I hope you're well, and thanks for tuning in, and thanks for watching 30 odd years ago.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I overspoke you there.
Overspoke.
Very good question, actually. He's asked if there were ever any parts in the script that you didn't actually quite believe that your character would actually say or do something. Was there anything that you ever disagreed with in the scripts? That's to both of you. So I'll let you go first, Stifyn.
No, I think apart from those language things, there was a few words in the first and second sort of my episodes where there were words in it that I was aware that maybe some people like Piers Morgan, who was saying things like Eastbenders, I sort of nitpicked a few of the words and just said, do you mind if I take this out? And instead of saying there's one of the part of the chain of your bike is bent, and I said there's a chink in it, is that okay?
Yeah.
Of course I couldn't say that now.
No.
Probably, but there was those sort of things. But storylines, as far as I was concerned, of the storylines, because my storylines were always with Mark, and I always thought they were brilliantly done.
Yeah, no, I agree. There was nothing specifically that I remember thinking, God, this isn't Gordon. I mean, it took me quite a while to feel really comfortable in the close and sort of acting with these actors that were very comfortable in their own skins and were used to it, and were, it's like a water off a duck's back. They just seemed so easy in their characters. So it did take me quite a long time to feel that comfortable. So the words, the scripts that I was given, I would never have dreamed of saying anything about them anyway, even if they weren't appropriate. But I don't remember them not being appropriate. It was all, but certainly as I got into it, I felt able to, just like Stifyn did, just adjust some of the words and say, well, I don't, can we just swap it around a bit? I don't think he'd quite put things that way. But I have to say, the writing was really, really good. And of course, the more the writers got to know what you were giving the actors, then they sort of molded stuff around you. So
they morphed then, didn't they?
Yeah. Yeah, that was that. So after a few episodes with me, Gordon's character, Gordon Mark II, was able to come through a bit more.
And you'd never mistake your lines for my lines, for example, which always showed good writing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And this is the last question. It's for both of you, obviously. Just basically summarise working on Brookside. What impact did it have on you and your career? Stifyn, I'll come to you first.
It was really exciting for me because I was an actor working in the Welsh language in Wales, and I desperately wanted to do English telly work as well as English theatre work and work in the both languages. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't scary for me to walk into Brookside because I'd done telly for 2 years here. Mm-hmm. But then having those brilliant storylines and to be able to say you've done the first gay kiss on telly and to work and laugh for 2 years solid while I was there with Mark. It wasn't brilliant money, but it was a great job. And it did help me get into Les Miserables afterwards.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you, Steve.
I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I was, as Stephen has sort of alluded to, I was very proud, so perhaps more in retrospect, actually, of being Gordon Collins, the first gay character in a British soap. You know, that's
yes.
No, I'm quite proud of that, and I wish, looking back, I may have. If that happened now, if I got that part now, I think I'd probably make more of it in the wider world. You know, I think I'd probably use that, as many actors do now. They use whatever position or puff that they've got, you know, whatever leverage they've got. So I don't regret not doing more, but in many ways, just sort of being able to play that part did it for me. But going back, I probably would have done a bit more, given myself a bit of a profile and sort of spoken out on gay issues, but I perhaps didn't feel.
You weren't the part I was, Mark. That's the problem. I was a media whore, wasn't I?
Well, you were. I didn't feel I truly qualified, you know. But Stifyn, yeah, because he was sort of part of that world, or became part of that world. But I am and remain hugely proud of it. But professionally, it was great because obviously I'd been an actor for a number of years, and it was because people always say, well, what do you do? It was nice that people could actually see what you did.
Yes.
And easy just to say, oh, look, you keep asking me what I do, what I'm in, what I'm auditioning for. Chuck the telly on tonight, Channel 4, and you will see me doing what I do.
Killing a dog.
Yeah. And it was just great to be able to say, there you are, just that's what I do. I'm an actor, you know, and so it was great to have that profile. And but yes, I've never put the show down or my part in it or the people that I worked with. It was a great 4 years. I mean, I joined it nearly 34. Well, I joined it 34 years ago. So
very different soap to all the other soaps, isn't it, Mark?
Yeah,
you know, it was very cutting edge.
Oh, absolutely. I was going to say it does. I mean, not to put the other soaps down, but it absolutely stood out as unique. Obviously, not just because of the sets and stuff, but it was, like you said, cutting edge, and it was really serious stuff back in the day. Even when I look at these episodes now, there's still an edge to it, and you know, the quality of the production and stuff have really held up. I think
they were kind of like if you remember Play for Today that used to be on television.
Yes.
They were like those, really. They were real dramas. They were real, you know, soap isn't quite the word for them. They were real sort of nitty-gritty dramas, a slice of real life. And once it went away from that in later years, it is, you know, I think that's probably why it lost its audience. I don't know, but certainly we were there.
I think it does. I think when shows perhaps stray too far from their roots. This is only a personal observation. I think when soaps especially like lose their roots and stuff, and I think sometimes it goes in a different direction. And
but they were great times. Steve and I had wonderful years there, and I have nothing but good memories of those days.
Thank you, Mark. And Stifyn?
Thank you.
Well, yes, as you've said, we've just. Is there anything you want to add?
Well, only that isn't it brilliant that Mark and I, we haven't spent time together for so long, and we, through you, have had this brilliant catch up.
Oh, well, I found it wonderful, but I mean, I can't believe it's been 30 years for you two, hasn't it?
Yeah.
30 years?
I know.
He's been crying himself to sleep every night.
Well, honestly, it's like you two have been buddies, and like you just saw each other the other day. You've just practically sort of picked up where you left off.
Exactly.
Well, that's the lovely thing.
Yeah.
It's been great seeing Stifyn again, and thanks, Ian, thanks for bringing us together.
Yeah,
thank you, and I shall keep the clips coming as well, because we're going to have to wrap up now, because well, I think we've run out of questions now. We've had a good chat, so I've really enjoyed it, and I want to thank you guys. Just want to mention here now that obviously upcoming, we've got Stephen Pinder and Gabrielle Glaister. They played Max and Patricia Farnham. I think they moved into the Collins old house, actually. Also, Justine Kerrigan and John McCardle will be coming on. That's an interview that we've had to do again, because last time it didn't go live on Facebook. So we thought we'd give it a break. So the spontaneity is still there, if you get what I mean. And we're going to have part 2 interview with Michael Stark and Lewis Emmerich, and hopefully Sue Jenkins about their post-rookie careers as well. So that's coming up now, and fingers crossed on other people I approach. So
brilliant. Thank you so much, Ian, and well done.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, guys. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and now I can read all the comments on Facebook, and I shall upload it to YouTube and start sharing it around. So
I'll contact you again, Mark, and we'll catch up.
Yes, we'll catch up very soon. Yes.
I'll phone Mark, and then we can bitch about you, Ian, when you're not there.
Yes, what a terrible host he was, stressing you both out. And apologies, guys, for the putting you on edge at first, but
don't worry.
We made it. We made it.
No, we could have gone on all night, but I guess
we could have gone on all night. Yeah, I just basically thought, with these technical mishaps, when we first came on, I just thought, oh my God, something's going to go wrong. But no, we made it. So it's been brilliant. Thank you very much, guys, and I'll chat to you all soon.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, guys. It's lovely to meet you. See you very soon. Bye-bye. Good night. I'm just going to say, leave meeting. Good night, all.